welcome to the Common Room. We'll be starting our session soon, so Tanvi, why don't you take it away?
Sure. Hello and welcome to the Common Room's first online session. We hope you are safe and we thank you for joining us today from all over the world. For anyone who is new here, we are a platform for young entrepreneurs and our mission is to contribute to the startup ecosystem through our various programming formats. You can learn more about them on our website, which is thecommonroom.foundation. We are active on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, so feel free to follow us, and you can also sign up for our newsletter on our website. For startups and young entrepreneurs who are in need of mentorship, we are happy to announce that our residency application is still open, so do check out our website to learn more or write to us on info@thecommonroom.foundation. Today's event is being recorded and it is also being live streamed on Facebook. So just wanted to put that out there. If you have any questions for our speakers, please write to us via Zoom private message and we shall ask them on your behalf towards the end of the session. We'll take as many questions as possible, but owing to time constraints, we may not be able to take all. So without any further ado, I'd like to quickly introduce our panelists for the evening. We are delighted to have columnist and author Aparna Piramal Raje, who also writes for The Mint and is an expert on business, design, and workplaces. Aparna will be moderating the talk today, and our speakers for this evening are Manit Rastogi, founding partner, Morphogenesis, Anuj Puri, chairman and founder, Anarock Property Consultants, and Lohit Bhatia, president, Workforce Management, Quest Corp Limited. I shall now let Aparna take over, and on behalf of the Common Room, thank you once again for joining us in the room.
Thanks, Tanvi. Thank you for having us, and thank you to the Common Room. So we've got a great audience here today, which is a mix of startups, corporates, people from the workplace and the architecture industry. So we hope to have a great conversation. And of course, we have a great lineup of panelists. So I'll just say a little bit more about each of them. Manit is the founding partner of Morphogenesis, which is also known as one of India's most globally acclaimed architecture firms, with a huge focus on sustainability. His work goes beyond architecture. He also works with urban policymakers to spearhead initiatives with an emphasis on environmental sustainability and social welfare. Lohit is the president of Quest's workforce management business, and he is actually responsible for a staffing business which has 265,000 associates. Under his leadership, the business has grown 20 times, and he leads teams across India, Singapore, APAC, and the Middle East. Anuj is a real estate industry veteran and is a trusted advisor to developers, occupiers, and investors. He founded Anarock in 2017 and was previously chairman and country head of the international property consultants Jones Lang LaSalle, with extensive experience across real estate verticals. Thank you for to all of you for joining us today. So let's start off with a little scenario that I want to paint of what this future post-COVID after lockdown office could look like. So I'm going to take a few minutes to talk through what that could look like, and I'm going to get your reaction to whether you think this is going to happen. So imagine this scenario that when you go to your post-lockdown office, the entry is through a contactless pathway. There are motion sensors and facial recognition technology operating through your mobile that will ensure that you rarely touch any surface, such as opening a door. Smart lifts will hold fewer people, and they can be hailed through a mobile phone. In terms of seating, the office looks emptier because only some of people come into work at a time, and the seating arrangement has. Will the office into the office be mandatory or will it be voluntary? Because some people now have work from home policies because it's worked out so well. Because of social distancing, everything is staggered. Entrances, departures, break times, lunch, everything has been arranged in such a way that there is social distancing, limiting the number of people allowed even in meetings, work areas, elevators, and even in washrooms. So also in parking lots, company transportations, hallways, bathrooms, throughout the workplace. In terms of meetings, chairs have been removed from meeting rooms for social distancing. Virtual meetings have been integrated in the workplace during the day to limit human face-to-face work. Visitors are only allowed to enter the workplace if their temperature has been pre-tested. And external meetings are very much a question about whether employees are allowed to go and actually go into other people's external offices. In terms of hygiene, there are new protocols regarding daily application of disinfectants, hand washing, on-site medical screening, use of protective equipment such as gloves and masks. There are new procedures for reporting and dealing with viral symptoms noticed by employees at work. And then there's a whole lot of stuff that you can't see. Okay, there's antimicrobial properties woven into fabrics and materials. There's ventilation systems that have been amped up to take care of disinfection, and even maybe UV lights for more deeply disinfecting the office at night. So is this out of some kind of sci-fi sort of setup, or is this the future of our office as we go back to work? Maybe we can start with you, Manit, and get a response, since you're from the architecture and design side.
Good. It said you can't unmute yourself as host has muted all participants.
Oh,
and
okay.
And that would have been a good thing for all the participants.
And Manit, that's what happens when you stay at home for long. That's
Okay. Thanks, Aparna. So, I would like to take a little step back from what you've just described for a minute or two, and then I'll get back to answering your question. What has been really important about what's happened with the COVID scenario is not COVID itself, is the fact that I think everyone has begun to realize that the purpose of how we live and how we work, and where we live and where we work and how we do this, a lot of those notions of going back to climate change, sustainability, health, wellness, safety, and hygiene are going to take far more critical importance going forward. And I think that's the positive side. I mean, dealing with COVID is one thing. However, when a human being becomes a weapon for another human being because of proximity, that poses many questions. And that poses questions fundamentally at the way for the last 5,000 years, we have thought about how we live in cities. So I am guilty of the fact, working in policy as well, that for, and even for me and after me, is cities have been about densification. They've been about TOD, transit-oriented development. Put as many people in as small an area as possible, increase FARs, go vertical, so that transit can be reduced. The net consequence has been an increase in density. Now, we will have to rethink that whole plan. And this is not new. Starting from there's the Spanish flu, the plague before that, every time a big event like this happens, it transforms the way of not only architecture, of how we live and how we conceive ourselves in communities. So I think there will be a big transformation that we will need to rethink in terms of urban planning, master planning, and policy making. We may have to start looking at mixed-use developments and mixed-use master planning at a far more serious level than we have, rather than concentrating workplaces in CBDs, residential separately, and then having that mobility. And so that whole notion of work life, recreational life, home life being segregated into separate compartments, the whole master plan of how our cities are today is being called to question. And I think that I don't think right now any government is thinking about it, but I think that this is going to have a major transformative issue. However, that's on the policy side.
Yeah, I do want to discuss that when we talk about transport for sure, but let's come back to this particular case.
Okay, so the second point, now coming to your particular question on the workplace. And like I said, the workplace is also about density. When I started my career and we were designing offices, at that time we were at about 300 square feet per person carpet area for an office. Over the last 25 years of my career, we've gone down to 50, 60 square feet per person on carpet area, because densification vis-a-vis real estate costs was the key. It's a deduction. It's a simple math. It wasn't complicated. Now we have to see a reversal. Now there are two branches here. One branch is the fact that you already have an office space. What do you do? So de-densification will be critical. There are many ways to achieve it. So you can proceed with, like what we are doing in our office post-lockdown. And I would like to go from personal example as to what we've done, because if it works for us, it will work hopefully for other people. We have enforced a 25% work from home. So everyone 1 week per month will work from home. So that's a 25% automatic de-densification. What we are doing is we're looking at a hub and spoke model. So we are moving offices of, say, in the NCR or Mumbai, rather than only have one office where we have 200 people coming. We plan to have 4 offices in each of the areas where people live, interconnected. So think of it as a 4-story building, and each office may be in, one may be in Burli, one may be in town, one may be in Andheri, etc., but connected virtually as one office, and then across the country. So we stack it up that way. Now, these 2 factors with de-densification will allow a hub and spoke model plus work from home, will allow you to have the existing workspace go up from whatever you were with number of people per square foot to halving that, or at least getting to 2/3 of that. That will lead to automatic social distancing without too much complication. Second impact of that now is the vertical transportation. Like I said, we've been building taller and taller buildings, getting people together. Now you've got 8 lifts in a building, 20 packs each. What do? Are you going to put 20 people in that lift and still send them up? You can't. So what we are doing in our own office where we have lifts is that we are staggering groups of people for different entry and exit times. So that decongest arrival, decongest departure, but more importantly, we're not going to allow more than 5 people in a 20 packs lift. But with the same wait time. So, these are just micro level examples that I'm giving you of how we. So I'm not going to talk about the no touch and the what all you've said, but all of us have heard a lot of that. I'm just going to try and talk about practical solutions to how to approach the decongestion problem of workspaces. Second comes to on the office itself is about air quality. Now, what we've begun to do, or what we plan to do, sorry, not begun to do, we'll only do it once, we are allowed to congregate in an office, and heaven knows when that is. But what we are planning to do is to reverse all our air conditioning systems at night. So obviously we don't have the chillers on, but reverse them. So we do what is called night purge. So the entire office gets flushed out with external air by reversing the AHUs. I mean, I don't want to get technical, but it's what pushes the air in. You just use it to push the air out with natural vent systems so that the whole office flushes out at night. It's called a night purge. It leads to cooling, automatic cooling, but it also removes a lot of the bacteria, the toxins, the viruses, all the foliated stuff out of the space. That is an easy thing to do. I would recommend all offices do it, to do a night purge. In addition to that, we're going to rip out all our false ceilings. We're going to rip out all our ducts. We're going to rip out all our shafts, because any contained still spaces, as you very well know, like water, air and water are symbiotic twins. If it is stagnant, it will breathe. And what happens in ducts and the space above false ceilings, the vertical shafts in building, is that they breed. They breed infection, they breed bacteria, they breed viruses, etc. So we're going to get rid of all of that and switch to alternative technologies of like radiant cooling the structure and using low velocity fans. Not very different from the way we used to do it in the 60s and the 70s, but with much better technology. Those days the fans were loud and rusty, and structural cooling was achieved through passive methods, but we intend to do it differently. So there are technologies that can cool, that use the structure for radiant cooling, so you don't cool the air, you cool the person. And at the same time, you eliminate all these sort of contained spaces that are high infection prone. So a combination of de-densification and getting rid of these. So look at your office. In fact, look at your home and find where are these spaces where air is stagnant or can possibly be stagnant, and rip it out. That would be my, and these are simple things to do. That would be my suggestion. Third thing that we're doing is in offices where we are in these sort of vertical buildings with a lot of glass facades, where the office immediately does not have access to an outdoor space without going down the lift into the garden or whatever. We are speaking to developers where our offices are, where we cordon off one grid, right? And the whole glazing opens up, but it's shut from the inside. So the air conditioning doesn't get affected, and it turns into a veranda, a fresh air open veranda, which has a psychological impact for employees so that they can step out there once, twice, thrice, 4 times a day preferably not to smoke, but if they do, I don't mind because I do. But just to sort of go there and have outdoor meetings in a open air environment. It's a psychological thing. Rather than remaining contained inside a plane or a plane-like environment, which is artificially and mechanically conditioned for 8 to 12 hours a day. So that's an easy thing to do. It requires you sacrificing some of your area, but it's possible to get your own personal small garden, no matter whether you're on the 20th floor. It's easy to do. It just needs a bit of convincing to the developer to do a little bit of facade moderation, and it's okay. And you've got this little garden. And I think that will go a long way as well. Of course, daylighting. Key, get those blinds out of your office. And if you're getting sun coming and hitting your eyes, put vertical reflectors or something that bounces the light back up to the ceiling, but don't put the blinds down. Let the daylight come in. There is a certain level of sanitization that happens because of that, but also psychologically. It gets rid of the sick building syndrome. What we're also suggesting, in addition to all of this, is get rid of all the switches in your office. Because switches are touch points. So lights should come on based on the lux levels available once the daylight is in. If it drops, they come on automatically. It's a very simple thing. You can ask a class 8 kid to do this for you, study science in a laboratory. It's just a simple sensor attached to your lights or to your switch, and get rid of all the switches. Okay, you don't need to go for expensive occupancy sensing lights, but you can just do it simple on a daylight sensor. It's not complicated. Coming back now, so that's your office. Now coming back to how you get to your office. Okay, I'm not going to go to mobility. We'll leave that for later. I saw that we'll discuss that later. But what we're looking at doing with our receptions is getting rid of the reception and rethinking the reception as a transition space. So anyone coming in, we're doing our own app where you enter your details and you will just scan them and get through. No receptionist, no reception desk, no contact. You're straight through. You know which meeting room you have to go to. It'll be signposted. You'll go straight to that. Okay, we're going to rely on simple digital technology to achieve that. What we are doing, therefore, with this empty reception space of ours, is we're putting sanitized meeting pods in them. So outside people coming in, don't get them into the office, just meet them there. And these are automated sanitized meeting pods. So simple. Or where we can't do that, we're just naturally venting our receptions where we can. Going to the lift lobbies where you take the lifts up, like I said, we're putting in simple protocols. Deferred timings, not more than 5 in a lift and a 20 pax lift, so 1/4 the capacity, and recalculating the wait time so that no one has to still wait more than the 45 seconds. That is the designated calculated wait time for vertical transportation. And all materials that are in our office, so we're getting rid of the fabrics that are absorptive. We are getting rid of hard materials, or we plan to get rid of all the hard materials that are absorptive and move to low absorptive materials, easy cleansing or self-cleansing. So, in a nutshell, that's what we are planning to do with our offices. And last but not the least, where we have access to landscape in some of our offices, like we have in Bangalore, we have a little garden. We're shutting down our internal cafe. Outside, we're putting simple tensile shading, dry misting, which is different from the wet misting that which causes humidity. Dry misting is a technique where it doesn't cause humidity, but same evaporation causes cooling. And we're moving our entire cafe out. Where we have gyms, we're moving gyms out. Where we, so any amenity is being moved out into landscape where we have that possibility, where we're talking to the developers to create those kind of amenities. Get rid of those bloody lawns, get rid of those water fountains, get rid of all that, aesthetic landscape. And let's turn that whatever little open space you have, whether it's Bombay, Bangalore, Delhi, whatever city, let's turn that into functional spaces and get some of these amenities out there. Our calculations on sustainability show that pretty much in every city, you can achieve at least 8 to 10 months out of 12 of comfort conditions by simple measures by using the landscape for these amenities. So that's the sort of, the way I see it. I don't really see as much as what you were describing, but I think DNA socialist in some senses, because we're older people, the millennials who are probably on the call, and we come from a mindset of limited resources. And I think that with that mindset, not only can we do what I'm describing, but we can create a model for the world where all these things are possible to do without expenditure.
That was my question. How much is all of this going to cost?
All of this costs lesser. You see, that's the brilliance of it. You're only taking things away, and you're bringing the environment into play.
Okay.
There is nothing that I've described to you. Okay, maybe then other than a daylight sensor. In my entire
Okay. So Manit, that's thanks for all the detail, and I think it definitely helps to have a perspective of an A&D firm when you're looking at how to refit the whole office. Lohit, let's turn to you now. You work with 1,500 clients across various parts of the world. What are they saying about the safety and welfare of their employees? Of course, these associates, they're on your payroll, but effectively they are working in the offices of your clients. So there must be a sense of joint responsibility of looking at how are they looking at their workplaces.
Absolutely. I think first and foremost, Aparna, thanks, you articulated what the future workplace would look like. We've been trying to figure that out ourselves for the last couple of days. What would it look like when we finally go back to work? Manit helped us draw a landscape or a sketch of what the new office would look like. Between the two of you, if by the time we're ending today, if you could just tell us when that date will be. Nobody is telling us on the calendar when it's going to happen. So having said that, I'll just come back to a couple of points that Manit mentioned. See, one of the learnings that we got, and you rightly mentioned, that Quess has over 385,000 people, to be precise, across 10 geographies out of India, most of them in India. We run 100 offices in India, and we run another 25 offices outside of India. Our early learnings actually came way back in Jan and Feb, when we saw the way APAC was moving, and particularly Singapore was moving. The entire social distancing and some of the things that Manit talked about started to happen in Singapore much earlier, and the government there reacted very, very fast. Yeah, a lot of people can say it's an island nation. It's got a population which is a fraction of Delhi itself. So it's very easy to maintain. It's got very high, per capita GDP earnings and everything. But at the end of the day, the simple things, some of whom which he's also mentioned, were quick learnings which came from there. One of the things that we learned was that the normal routines of facility management services, as was known in the past, is not what you would do in future. The evening deep cleaning, the fumigation, the sanitization, services were seen there. We are fortunate ourselves as Quess to be having a very large facility management company of our own. So they obviously adopted that entire routine of people wearing the overalls and the PPEs and having the fumigation and the sanitization. And they started doing these routines late in the night. By the time we came into early March, we'd already deployed at our offices and the customer offices sanitizers all across. We had deployed IR thermometers everywhere. The security guards today had already converted less to securing the premises by physically, touching you or checking you, but more to check you whether you're carrying a virus inside or not. And hence their routine was more about the fact that, does this person even need to be inside the office? Does this person have, and what Manit spoke about is very true. Early parts of March, we were doing this by a person filling it up in a register that, you've not had any fever or a cough or a cold, and the person you've come to meet knows this, and you've disclosed it to the organization. As we came into the lockdown, we've already converted that into an app. So today we've converted this into an application where when the 385,000 people, today most of them are not able to work, only the essential services, e-commerce, food, FMCG, transportation and services like that are allowed, the rest are not. But we've already created it in our application that when people do go back to work, every morning along with their attendance, they're not just marking an attendance with a latitude and a longitude, but there's a quick check report which comes. which tells the person to answer a set of questions. Very similar to how the government has envisaged the Arogya Setu app, but this is more for us and for our customer. And the push message goes to the customer that not only have we captured this person's attendance for the day and the person is coming, but the person's also coming safe and sound. At the offices, like I mentioned, sanitizers, IR thermometers with security guards, that's become essential. That's become a way of life. For the facility management team at nights to have the fumigation and the sanitization service, that's become a way of life. But I think I also accept the point which was just being made was all along, the densification was so important to a company like us also from a cost perspective that we probably brought it down to 70, 65, that range. And the next we were looking at is that certain departments should even go to 45. Why do they need even 65 square feet? Some people can sit in rows and stuff like that. What this lockdown has really shown us is 6,000 core employees sat at home all of a sudden in March, executed the March payroll for over 2,000 customers, 385,000 people, and seamlessly closed March as a month and without having to be at office. So what we realized is that instead of going in for that fancy for densification of bringing it to 45, how much of your portion of organization can continue to run from outside of the office itself, which then enables you to now occupy 150 square feet or less number of people. So the other thing that we've looked at is what's called the 1/2 rule. See, all along, our learning has been about something called BCP, and then everyone on this call would understand that all the BCPs we ever wrote was about cloud, was about servers, was about technology, was about processes. We probably never felt that there could come a day when you'll need to have a BCP for each human in your organization. Because if you don't have a backup to that person, and that person goes into quarantine for whatever the reason may be, then what do? Who takes over? And who takes the decisions as long as that person is in quarantine? So again, early in March, what we had already institutionalized, and now with the lockdown, we've started putting it in an app, in an application, is that each person has a pair. So we've created a pair for everyone. So let's say I have a pair for myself at work, and similarly, my manager would have a pair for him, and then my team members and everyone in the ecosystem would have a pair. The pairs don't have to be in the same office ever. They will not be allowed. They will come on alternate days. The pairs cannot attend the same client meeting together. They cannot travel in the same vehicle together. Because the idea is to have BCP at a human level now. The other thing what we've also done is, or what we are institutionalizing now, is that we've created by the industries that we serve, and we've given each one of them a module as to how going back to work safely can be attained in India. There are early signs which are already visible from countries which are, say, out of it. South Korea is definitely out of it. New Zealand is out of it. Australia is out of it. Fortunately, Spain and Italy, which were the epicenters before America took over, and we all know America has this fascination of being number one on everything. On this also, they have definitely become number one. But Spain and Italy also, if you notice the graphs coming downwards, the graph of both new cases every day and active cases is coming downwards. So I think we're a matter of time, but we're learning from each of these countries just to see what policies and processes can be brought about to the human level. In summation, what I'll say at this stage is it's going to be a lot of combination of how you ensure that your organization continues without having everyone together at the same place. And they're very simple things. One of the things I would like to add, like Manit made a few comments on simple things that you can do. Earlier, every employee was tagged to an office. We've taken that routine away. We've said no requirement to do a biometric. And on the mobile app, there is there is a drop down every day in the morning which allows you to mark from office, irrespective of which office you go to, and from home. So what we've told everyone is that you could choose the office which is adjacent to you. Because mind you, when we go from the lockdown period to the unlocking period, we'll see a very interesting India. There'll be employees who will be staying in the red zone, but their offices would be in green and yellow, or vice versa. The offices would be in the red zone and employees would be in green and yellow. So what we've just said is as far as you can move out and whenever you can move out. A, don't need to come to work every day. B, never come with your pair. Just ensure that you and your pair are not in the same office every day. So you alternate. That itself gives us 50% of the people never coming to work on a particular day. And C, ensure that when you are marking yourself, you choose the nearest office. So you also take care of that transportation issue, because public transport will be disrupted for a lot longer than we can imagine. So these are some of the things that we've already institutionalized. I'll allow you to ask more set of questions and then come back as to what some of the other industries are planning to do in terms of customer base and all.
No, it's really interesting what you're saying about the densification and how you're moving. It seems to be the sort of bigger theme. Anuj, I'll just turn to you and say that we have this now interesting perspective on commercial real estate, where you have these announcements made by companies like TCS saying that they're going to move towards working from home and saying they're going to cut down on their requirements. At the same time, there is some amount of press, which is actually a more, I think, based internationally, but saying that because of social distancing, we actually need bigger offices. So where do you feel this is? How do you feel these two trends which might prevail, and where might we end up?
So thank you very much, Aparna, for having us. I mean, I've thoroughly enjoyed the last half an hour. It has been very intellectually stimulating. I mean, a lot of what I heard from Manit, Lohit, is really, really nice. I mean, the way they were speaking and the way that you picturized it, Aparna, I mean, it looks like surreal. It looks like, genuinely, as you rightly said, we're going into a film. And you have to do all this thing, and this is how it is going to be, and you have to use the mobile and do it, and this is going to be the reality. We know that this is how the offices are going to be. So thank you very much for organizing this, and great set of panelists. I would say three parts, Aparna. One part is most of the years in India, the office lessees, who have taken larger space on lease have been US corporates, not actually Indian corporates. So, to us on the lease side, US corporates really matter. I think between the European and the American, it's something like 60-65% of the space every year is taken by, these two categories. So the first is, Aparna, we'll have to see is, how damaged their economies are. I mean, some of us who've been here, we saw what happened after 2008. And, the rentals just fell, demand fell, used to be 35 million square feet prior to the 2008, and suddenly it went to 21 million square feet. I'm a drop of 35-40%. Still early, I'm not saying that may happen, but, imagine if they are the largest occupiers of space in India and their respective economies get damaged, unlikely they're going to expand in that. So that's the first one, which to my mind is bigger than work from home impact, because over the next 2-3 years, that can have a very profound impact. Equally, the other thing could be is that because they're hurt so badly there, they may want to outsource more in India because there's a better cost arbitrage to do it. We did not, however, see that in 2008 and 2009. We saw it the other way, that the demand went down. I think on this occasion, maybe the supply will also go down a little bit because the supply chains are also disrupted, whether it's the migrant labor, whether it's the building supplies coming in from China or India. So, that will also get disrupted. To my mind, that's a large portion, which I remember, in 2008, it wasn't immediately. It was about 6 or 7 months later that India got impacted because, they first see their country, their businesses, their clients, they consolidate there. Then they start to look at, countries like India. The second is this work from home. I think the jury is still out. TCS is a very, very credible company. And for them to make that announcement, to say that 25% of our workforce is going to operate from office by 2025. I mean, it has let the cat out amongst the pigeons, because, the clients of the other IT firms are calling those IT firms and saying, well, if TCS is doing, why aren't you doing it? And by the way, when you're going to do this, then we want the cost reduction in our fee. And that's the common dialogue that is going on in the larger IT firms, where their clients have approached these IT firms and said as well, perhaps you can also do the same. And if you actually do the same, then you don't need the office and the cost, and then you pass that cost to us, cost benefit to us. When you speak with many of these guys, the IT corporates, the CEOs and the real estate guys, they're like saying, boss, 5-10% top hierarchy is okay to work from home. The middle level, the lower level IT that we had, they're living in Chamri accommodation. I mean, I spoke with someone on Sunday, very, very large occupier, amongst the top 3 largest occupiers of India. And it's like, very difficult, Anuj, to have them work from home. I think what he said was, and Manit alluded to that, was that they said is that maybe we will not take offices in one central building, but we'll probably have disaggregated offices because these guys need to find an office space. Our infrastructure, our homes are very tight. The in-laws and the parents and the dog and the cat and the kids and the maid and the servant and everybody, ringing the bell. I'm not sure how productive it can be, Aparna. So that's my second thing. And the third is, it is true what you said, Aparna, that, the social distancing norms which are in the US, the headquarters of those companies are also asking these guys, their subsidiaries in India, to start to follow. And that norm is 80 square feet on a built up, I think Manit said is about 50, 60 square feet on carpet, which results into 80 square feet on built up. And it's about 120 where they want this to be pushed. So, that then has a positive impact because suddenly 50% of the space is additionally required. So we will see, Aparna, how this entire thing impacts the overall demand, given the economic issues that the US and Europe will face, the work from home, how successful that is going to be, and then the social distancing. And, I think Lohit brought a very, very valid point is that, maybe we'll not have all the guys in the office at the same time. I think Manit said is that he's now said is 25% of the workforce every week in a month will work from home. Maybe that is practical, but not sort of everyone work from home.
And how long do you think, in terms of timeline, it'll take for these trends to make themselves apparent, like in
so
terms
Aparna,
of
I would
quarters?
say is about 4 to 6 months. So as I said, is Aparna, to me, the biggest one is the demand first side. I think a lot of us are getting fascinated from work from home and the social distancing thing is, to me, the bigger one, having lived that life earlier, that is very severe. I did make a mistake at that time when I said is India is decoupled. We're not joined at the hip with the US. We're insulated. And it came like a thud. I think it happened in September 2008. By sort of March 2009, we were deep into it when the corporates started to send termination, consolidation, reduction in space, rent negotiation. And mind you, Aparna, this time, in a lease of 9 years, most of the corporates are outside the 3-year lock-in. At that time, they were still in the 3-year lock-in because majority of the spaces at that time were taken in 2006 and 7.
Okay,
in 8 and 9, they were
Yeah.
still in that lock-in period. Now they are all out of the lock-in. So their ability, they have amortized the fit-out costs. They've already amortized it. Their ability to send one notice and next day go away to somewhere else is very high because they're not in the lock-in period, and they've amortized all the fit-outs that they had. So ability to move is going to be quick versus at that time.
Okay, so we have startups on the call and in very much part of the Common Rooms ecosystem. So what advice would you have for them as to how they can equip themselves? Because obviously they may not have access to the same sort of resources, and not just the resources, but also the same kind of thinking about how to equip their spaces. And in terms of density, I think startup offices have always been pretty dense. So having the flexibility there to reduce the density is that a question also? Who would like to take that up? Anyone?
So I'll just come in on that point into what Anuj just said. This is so true today. Just about 3 months prior, we had an annual planning session. We do that, towards the early part of January. Do you know the biggest takeaway from that annual planning session, or one of the biggest takeaways was that in cities where we have multiple offices, let's consolidate. So we decided Bangalore to be the
Yeah,
first.
but that's exactly what's been happening. In
And
fact, Lohit, I'll just tell you that everything I've been writing about for the last, many years now has all been about consolidate, collaboration, let's get people together, let's get people to interact. That's been the fundamental premise of every office fit out that's been going on until about 4 months ago,
So in January, we came back and said Bangalore first, Delhi NCR second, and Mumbai third. And let's consolidate. In Bangalore, we were on the dotted line to sign for a building, which would have given us something like 12 floors, 2,400 people. And incidentally, currently, we run the same 2,400 people in Bangalore from 13 different buildings, because these are different businesses. And they all have their own powers to take their own offices closer to their customer base. It's so true of what I said, that the first decision which was taken on the very second day of lockdown was stop that transaction. Let's not get into it. Let's not come together under one building, because that is going to be even more disastrous in coming times. You cannot have your entire organization functioning out of one space or one building, because the nature of this virus is such that when something happens, you will have to quarantine the setup, and you cannot afford to quarantine your entire organization. So just to add to that, the point that you just raised about startups, I think the ability for them to be flexible is a lot more than the ability for large companies to be flexible. One of the challenges that at least the IT companies noticed in the first 2-3 weeks was not about the ability for a person to have a house connected on internet or a laptop, because most of IT has all of that. They have the laptops and they have connectivity at home as well. They were already in any case working from home at least once in a week, most of the people in the IT industry. But the biggest issue was that a lot of your softwares, which is hard coded with your customers, ran on a firewall or on a static IP, and you wouldn't be able to take that to the homes and then give it across to hundreds and thousands of people to come in together and collaborate. I think the challenge in the next few days or the weeks to solve the problem is, how does an organization run concurrently, irrespective of the fact that if 50% are working from office and 50% alternatively from home, and yet your softwares enable all of them to work in tandem, irrespective of whether which IP address this person is coming in from. So I think we solved that part of the equation. Like Anuj brought in the point of the European and the US customers, I just like to add, they will again have a say in this. So let us not forget that in 2020 also, most of these customers will have a say, whether some of this software can be logged in from home or cannot be logged in from home. Fortunately, at least in the last weeks, the customers have allowed those things to happen. Manit, you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Lloyd. Just coming back to the startup issue. So, number one, I think that they're the luckiest people on the planet right now. Okay, so let's get that part straight. Okay, they've inherited a world built by foggies like us, me, the baby boomers, who've handed them a world which, is something that they can't understand right now. So why are they so lucky? Because they had got all the opportunity today, being in the startup ecosystem, to solve all these problems that we've created. So look at the screen. You're seeing the screen, right? And I can't understand. And I'm a designer. I design physical spaces. We design offices for people to be in. So any startup likes to have this really funky, nice sort of space to work in, and they have to be able to interact. They can't do it work from home with the 10 people in a startup working from home. It doesn't work. They need to all day brainstorm, think ideas, and be really, really agile to shifting things around. Now, when I look at the screen, I'm like, why the hell isn't someone designing a better virtual environment for us to engage in? Who the hell designed a grid of 3x3? I mean, what kind of, why this should have been a 3-dimensional perspective-based screen, at least some sensibility of of space like we have in the physical space. Now these guys are sitting in the are sitting in this ecosystem. So my advice to the startup is that, you know, we know you will have to operate in a physical space because that is the nature of that beast. Human interaction leads to innovation. It cannot be taken away by work from home, by splitting that. You can't break up a whole into its pieces and expect the same result. Okay, that works for larger organizations where 25% can go up. It doesn't work for startups. A. B. Find yourself spaces that are naturally akin to what I was describing earlier in the talk. I'm not going to go there. So instead of trying to get into a glass building in a campus, try and get an old bungalow in you know, which and take that up, which has multiple rooms, which is got windows and fans, and, you know, go to that kind of a space. You know, go to lofts, go to warehouses, find alternative spaces than enclosed glass buildings, because you are not yet subjected to our body temperatures of being in 22 to 24 degrees Celsius and you get uncomfortable. Beyond that, you know, you're far more agile. So go with that. But more importantly, look at everything today. Look at everything today, and you will find, you'll find the possibility of coming up with new ideas, new solutions to everything that we have done for the last 100 years, which is wrong. And that is my suggestion. That, I think, is your biggest takeaway today.
Okay. Okay. Lohit, how important is communication now in terms of the psychological safety aspects for people going back to work?
Extremely. I think the first four, or rather, let me divide it like this. I think the first week, communicating with employees and communicating with teams was all about telling them that this is the new normal and it will change. By the time we got a recognition that this lockdown is going to be extended, I think people started making plans and said that even through the lockdown, let's do business. So everything shifted towards, okay, how do you acquire customers? How do you keep busy? How do you still run the ecosystem and the organization and keep growing while you're in a mode of a lockdown? Now is the recognition where we could see either lockdown 3.0, as the government wants to call it, or famously the media has already started calling it. In this lockdown 3.0, there'll definitely be some sectors and industries which will be opened up. Some districts close to even 350, all which are green, could possibly be opened up. I think now is the time when we've all, as organizations, large organizations, started reaching out to the employee ecosystem and started understanding from them how prepared and ready are they now to transition back to work. Yeah. Because there was a transition at work from home. Now there's going to be a reverse transition of back to work. And believe you me, there will be other challenges and flexibilities which this will throw along with it. Some of which would be anybody having a elder living with them in their house. They may not be comfortable coming back to work because for them it's risky to go to work, come back every day and stuff like that. Anybody having a young child at home may not want to immediately go back to work. So how flexible can companies be that for these set of people, can they have a different way of looking at the work and the scenario and the longevity for them to continue working from home? And for the rest, how can you allow them to come out in a different way? Anybody with a comorbid condition, you'll have to ask that question to every employee in your organization. Maybe this was something which wasn't asked in the past. Just a set of people would have known. But now HR departments and teams need to know. I was just thinking yesterday that, I don't know how many on this call. Manit keeps saying that most of the people on the call are, the Gen X and Gen Y. But assuming that they are, I think it's only Anuj, Manit and me who probably still have those nightmarish dreams once in a while, where suddenly we have that, strange dream saying that I had a physics test and I studied for history and went. It's all oldies like us who have fears like that. So believe you me, days before and nights before people being told to come back to work, people are going to have that. Yeah. Or that famous dream that people have, that I was boarding the school bus and I was in my pajamas. I was not in my school uniform. So all of these fears are going to come back to people because after a very prolonged shutdown or working from the home environment, you're suddenly asking them to come to work. I'll tell you, my personal experience, this is my 25th year, working. I have never ever worn even a collared t-shirt to work in 25 years. And as long as possible, if I'm going to a customer, would always have a jacket and probably even a tie on, irrespective of what the weather out there is. But last, 5 weeks, we've done calls, and I've been a little more comfortable. So I've been at ease with, stuff which still is formal. So the human mind has changed. It's already asked itself to change. And we will have to understand that our employees have also changed. So we will have to go through that routine. The HR teams will have to do a great job of dissecting that, but have the flexibility is what I will say. Just retain that flexibility.
In fact, the MHA guidelines also say that people who are working, who have elderly, people living at home or comorbidities or young children need not come to work. So I think those are there. Okay, I'm just going to ask you one last question, each of you, before we move into our Q&A with our audience. So what if there was a vaccine? Do you think we'd go back to business as usual when it comes to the workplace? Like, do you think our workplaces would just continue to be as they are?
Anuj, go please.
Okay.
Anuj, go ahead. Yeah.
Aparna, I don't think so. I think the world is going to be very different. Not only just the workplaces, I think across the board. I think it is a common thought that, we went into this tunnel and, this tunnel is going to get finished on 3rd or whenever it is, and we're going to come back and the world is going to be the same on the other side. I don't think so. I think this is going to be about a lot of the impact. And the answer will be perhaps a psychologist or a sociologist or a technologist. They'll give answers to that. And lots of, not only workplaces, lots of businesses will change. And then you're going to see very low touch, environment across the board. So it's not that the vaccine has come and you will not, have that low touch. And my thought is, at a global level also, you look at it, retail, I mean, it's being hammered, massacred at this moment in time on that, how does that come back ever? How do the malls come back? How do the multiplexes come back? How do the restaurants come back? How do the food courts come back? How do the common areas, really come back? And, even if they come back, would the people's mindset be the same as what we had gone into this? I think it is not. I think it has impacted people. I think it has impacted people for times to come. And you will see the behavior across the board, whether it's workspaces, whether it is businesses, whether it's human behavior, that will change.
Okay. Manan?
Yeah, so I definitely share Anuj's viewpoint. Okay. And I didn't get into specifics and I don't intend to, but like I said, every time there's been something in the history of, in the last 500,000 years, which has been this catastrophic, where it has affected everyone across the globe, the world has always become slightly different, okay, or majorly different. And, and you can trace that back, history will tell you that. However, I also do think that, people do have a short memory, and this is going to be the problem here. Okay, the problem of this virus has been that it's sort of been age specific in a way, right? So anyone under the age group of say 25 feels feels largely far more secure than anyone say who's 65 plus or 70 plus. Okay, now policymakers are generally in that second category. So I definitely do feel that category of that 65 or 60 plus people are as a natural human as a natural human evolutionary reaction to survival are going to change this world. Okay, I don't necessarily think that change is going to come. So it's going to be very age specific, and people and demographics control how this world operates. And India being a much younger nation than say a Japan or a European nation, we're going to see very, very different outcomes of this. But one thing is for sure, it's not going to be the same. And I do believe in that. I was just thinking when you were talking right now, and when you made your opening statement, And what came to my mind was, 1960s, 70s. I think the first time I saw Star Trek was 1970s. Now, what you were describing was Star Trek. Doors opened automatically on facial recognition. Everything was compartmented. The whole system was designed, A, for no currency and no money because resources had been conquered, but B, everything was on this hyper sanitized model in 1970s thinking of what the future would be like. We may actually get somewhere very close to that. We may trigger ourselves very close to that. I'm not saying we'll go out into space or whatever, but we may find our offices like you were describing earlier.
I think it's a sort of sci-fi meets the hospital, it's like that. it's because it's basically making an office like a hospital in many which ways. Lohit, you want to have the last word on this?
Yeah, I think both of them are absolutely right on this. This is 100% going to change the way we think about life in future, because it's not a 45-day lockdown. It's not just a health crisis that we are dealing with. During the health crisis, we've dealt with financial crisis, and a lot of people are dealing with it as we speak. And we are dealing with, an emotional crisis. When so many things happen together, that it impacts you financially, it impacts you emotionally, and in and around you, you hear all this. I think it's going to have a huge mark on people for times to come, unless or until we do one of the other things, which is we stop WhatsApp altogether tomorrow morning. We shut all the news channels tomorrow, and we just keep pumping one news to the world which says that more people die of influenza than they have died of the pandemic even now. But see, this is a silent killer. The problem with this is, the fear with this is that every time you want to go to any place and you want to touch that elevator button, or you just rest your arm on some side door or whatever, you have that fear running in your mind that what are you going to contract? And there are these, the doctors and everyone is saying there could be a second wave. This could become like H1N1. It comes every year. This could become the cold or the flu of the, winter. So if it does, and even if you've seen the vaccine, 8 billion people are not going to get a vaccine in months and months to come, even if it's made free of charge. So it is going to have a huge impact. People are not going to behave the same way. The patterns are going to change, but I believe that the patterns will split all of us in 3 broad categories. They're going to be the extreme young, and I'll take the young up to 30, no kids married or no kids unmarried, whichever scenario. Their behavior would go very differently. And I think the spending is going to actually increase in that segment rather than diminish. Because if they've been hearing from their fathers or elders in the home that save, because there's a rainy day, they're going to save for what? Why should I save? I don't know when it's going to be a rain, and the rain is going to just bring a flood. So I might as well enjoy and, just see the world and whatever. So their behavior is going to be different. The 30s to 60s will have a very different behavior, because they will have to think for themselves, they'll have to think for their kids, and they'll have to think for their parents. And 60s and above, obviously, the governments are going to be also talking differently. The employers, if they are still employed, will talk differently, and the workplaces will also have to behave differently for them. So I think the world's going to eventually break into these 3 segments. Behaviors will change. But let me just end on one last point. If we see only this one wave, a lot of what we are discussing can get discounted by about 30 or 40%. Because the other beauty about the human mind is it forgets misery faster than it remembers happiness. But if this comes back in any shape or form, whether 3 months later or 3 quarters later, and the world goes through the same pain, then yes, this is going to be remembered for a century, not just a generation.
Okay. So I'm just going to hand it over to the common room to ask a couple of questions. Disha, you want to take it over?
Hi, thank you all very much. This is super exciting discussion, and we've gotten some great questions as well. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, we'll just be taking a couple, but you can feel free to email me if you weren't able to ask your question today. So Anuj, the first question comes for you from Rahul Rai. So given your global perspective, what percentage of the workforce do you think will be working from home within the year?
Interesting. I think in the US and Europe, they would have a much larger percentage of workforce. They are more equipped, they have better infrastructure, they have workspaces that they've created at homes. So that'll be between, I would say 35 to 50% has an ability to work from home. I just think India is tough. Larger corporates will be able to do that, Rahul. I don't think that smaller corporates, mid-sized corporates have the quality of workforce who have infrastructure built for working from home. And I would say perhaps at best 10%. But larger corporates will be able to do it because they may provide infrastructure, they may provide the technique on how to work from home. I just think it's tough in India to implement this more than that.
Alrighty, thank you. Thank you, Anuj. Our next question comes from Vijay Chaudhary, the founder of Mobilytics. In fact, he was part of the cohort of our recent residency program at the Common Room. So Vijay asked the panel, how will work from home transform home design? And which tools will households require to adopt for the future of work? This is open to all of you.
So I'll step in first. It has to do with design. Not that design is my domain, everyone designs. But I can tell you that from all the residential developments that we're doing right now, we are beginning to, and we've done a lot of, we've done some research on this, and we're beginning to see a lot of change. So what we're beginning to see at one level, that no matter whether it's a really tight 2 BHK or whether it's a luxurious 3 or 4 BHK, one bedroom is being designed in a way which is independently accessible directly from the lobby or from the core, so that it can be used in work from home scenarios. And it can, so it can have a separate access and entry, and it can be a home office. What we are finding and what we are working on currently is that we always thought of an apartment or a house, like a residence, the living room, the dining room, the kitchen, and the bedrooms. Now we are beginning to think of them differently. We're beginning to think of them as an office and a school by the day that transforms into a home by the evening. It's not the dining table that you're using for work. It is, it is your workspace in the day. So this whole notion of where modern design came from was one function, one space. So if you look at, office, bedroom, dining room, kitchen, gym, this, that, whatever. And what we will see that will change dramatically, and this is also very interesting for startup, is that each space in the home will become multifunctional. A bedroom will become an office, may become a classroom, may become a bedroom, may become a socializing space, may become a gym. And then what does that begin to do to furniture design? Is it the bed that transforms itself into a study table, that transforms itself into a dining table, that transforms itself into something that you can do push-ups and pull-ups with? So what is so that is, I think, what we're going to begin to see, that kind of transformation, where spaces have multiple uses, and so does the furniture and the people together, and how they use that space. So, that's on one side. The other side, there are going to be many other repercussions when it comes to, we see as, at a planning level, that we spend all our time making high housing towers and having large landscapes. I think what we'll begin to see a lower rise buildings, but much higher density, because, the notion of getting people away, that many people into lifts going up, but getting people closer to the ground, albeit with the lesser open space outdoors, but more accessible. So we will see a stronger relationship in terms of how residential design changes over the few years to come.
Interesting. Lohit, you want to talk about the tools that people might need to equip a home office?
So Manit is so on the point here. In the entire lockdown period, I can tell you from personal experience, my wife's a designer and she does home and interior design and stuff like that. Every morning I get up and I give her one more item on the list that needs to because
she's going to make you a partner in your 1+1 scheme, where you can't be together anymore.
Because all along we thought that it's good to have gadgets and laptops and it's enough to be, connected through a broadband. The minute kids had to both get onto Zoom calls for their school, we suddenly realized a single broadband is not enough at home. So that needs to change. Today morning in the morning, I was sharing with you guys that I was on a meeting which was very essential to have continuity of the connectivity, and suddenly the power went. And I'm in a high rise, so it takes about 30 seconds for the generator to come in. By the time the power kicks in, comes to your house, 45 seconds. But then it takes whole amount of time for your Wi-Fi, your broadband and everything to boot all over again. That takes about 3 minutes. Now, all along when we were watching Netflix and everything, and that was the only reason we were consuming so much of broadband, it really didn't matter if it took 3 minutes for the movie to come back. But when this got terminated today morning, I said, no. Now we need UPS also for our Wi-Fi devices and everything. So there has to be a UPS which has to sit next to the Wi-Fi device. If work from home continues for longer, Manip is absolutely right. A lot of people will have to make investments, not large investments, but surely investments to make the workplace at home comfortable. See, it was very easy for us to tell our office, I want my table like this, and I want chair like this, and the back should be like this. We've never thought of it like that, to be working from home consecutively 10-hour, 12-hour days. So that kind of investment is going to come in. So everybody who's in that space of, architectural or in the space of interior design and everything, there's going to be a wave of business which is going to come, converting the way Manit just explained. Doesn't matter how big the home is, but it should have functionality to convert itself to a functional office, as well as for kids to be able to study. So yeah, absolutely.
Anuj, you want to say something, or can we move to the next one?
No. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying listening.
Okay. Let's make this the last one, Disha.
Yes, thank you. So our final question comes from Jagdeep Chagpal. With e-crime on the rise, how does an organization reassure customers about security when employees are working from home? And this is for the panel.
Sorry, could you take that once again?
With e-crime on the rise, how does an organization reassure customers about security when employees are working from home?
In fact, Zoom itself has had question marks, and I know people who've had their Zoom compromised. Yeah.
So I'll begin by telling you what's happening on the employment space and the IT industry. Mm-hmm. One of the largest demand which has constantly come in every day of this lockdown is cybersecurity. Customers that we were doing business with, who are IT majors or who supply workforce to other large companies, the biggest requirement which has happened through this period, and I'm not just talking India, the same for APAC, the same for Singapore, the same for Middle East, is cybersecurity. I think the level of detailing to which people will have to go to in this new normal, if that's what we want to agree that this will continue to be in, will be a tectonic shift as far as how digital coding is done and how safe the work environment can be made when people are working from home. I'll also just throw in one last point, and then Anuj and Manit can come in. When we moved work from home, we suddenly realized that the code of conduct and the non-disclosures that we had signed with our employees were good enough when they were mostly working from office using a laptop. But now they are using their home IP. They could possibly be using a home laptop. Now a new requirement needs to come in. So the HR department had to come back along with the IT team with a new code of conduct and a new non-disclosure agreement, which had to be then digitally sent to the employees and said, now that when you come tomorrow morning and you log in, please just read through these 2 documents and consent on it. So yes, absolutely, that has to be. That's the only way we'll be able to function.
Anuj?
So, Aparna, I think it is going to be paramount. If this work from home is going to become a norm, I mean, you'll have to provide cybersecurity. Otherwise, this entire thing breaks down. So, clearly, as Lohit has said, we weren't really prepared for this. Once the lockdown opens up, companies, corporates will be a lot more prepared. to ensure that there is going to be cybersecurity. And hopefully, Aparna, some of these will not be done on Zoom going forward. Because of the cybersecurity. Clearly, that is going to be a big angle that everybody is going to be asking. That we did it once, and I think this is more like a W. That we'll open, we'll go back into lockdown, we'll open, we'll then go back into lockdown until the vaccine really comes in. So I do feel is that once it opens, I think people will very quickly start to assess that how do we ensure cybersecurity. I mean, we have 2,000 of our employees, and that is one of the concerns that we have. Exactly what Lohit has said. And when it opens, we know exactly what we're going to be doing to making sure that our clients' data, our data, is all very well protected.
Okay. Great. So, Manat, did you want to say something or?
No, I completely agree. Except I just wanted to point something out that if you look at the pre-digital days, and if you look at the bank area in London or any sort of central area, so where the Bank of England was is where all the other banks happened around them, because they were moving currency or gold physically. So if they were closer, then the chances of it getting stolen were lesser. And that distributed very, very quickly over the next 10, 20, 30 years. My point really is, if there's something to be stolen, there'll be thieves to steal it. Okay. So as much as we needed antiviruses and we needed security, and whether it's physical or whether it's in offices, or whether it's work from home or whatever new format that we obtain, there will be the people who will want to steal, and there will be the security that will come along with it to prevent that from happening. However, I think we will enter a phase, and this is my guess, that we will have to begin to realize that the moment we type or say anything into this digital medium, we must accept the fact that it is reasonably public. Because I think that the more omnipresent digital technologies get, no matter how much cybersecurity we put in, it is, we'll just have to accept the fact that privacy is not what we understood it to be in the past.
Okay, great. So just to sort of summarize, I think, first of all, thank you. But we've had a really interesting discussion. It seems that in terms of themes, this work from home is, we're still deciding how it's going to work out and how much absorption is really going to happen. But clearly it's a trend that is here to stay for a long time. Manat's point about the hybrid home and how we can make spaces more multifunctional is a very interesting one for all of us to consider. This bigger theme that I think both Lohit and Manat and Anuj, all the panelists talked about in terms of the densification going down and finding hub and spoke models and finding different ways to actually work together and in this kind of post-lockdown model to make employees feel safer is going to be a big one. And then we also talked about the importance of communication to actually assure employees and having flexibility on the HR side to make sure that employees feel safer. So I hope with that we've been able to give a few ideas to everybody on this call as to what you can do to equip your workplace to make it more safe and secure after the lockdown. And I'm sure the Common Room team would be happy to hear from you with any questions that you might have afterwards. So would just like to thank everyone. Thank you, Lohit. Thank you, Manat. Thank you, Anuj. Thanks for being.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Aparna, Lohit,
Thank you.
Manat, and Anuj for joining us and for taking the time to share your expertise as well as views. And thank you all for being a part of this virtual event. And we look forward to more such events and fruitful discussions.